All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all. Pull this off. I can see it already. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom? Here. Mrs. Spirito? Here. Ms. Laird? Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Ray? Here.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting held April 11th, 2022? Motion by Mrs. Ray. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Spirito?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes. Motion's approved. No walk-on items tonight.
No, sir.
Miss Laird is running a little bit behind, so we're going to come back to the legislative report. She'll be here shortly. She got hung up at work, so moving on to and so we'll come back to that one. Moving on to community engagement. Is there anyone that would like to address the board? All right. We will move on to superintendent's report.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Price. This evening, we'd like to start off with Shari. And you haven't been watching her. She is everywhere. She is everywhere. But one of those places she is in Fremont City Schools. And we've asked her to kind of come back and just give a quick update on kind of the things we've been doing lately with her and all things diversity and inclusion. So, Shari, have at her.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Good. What I want to do is just structure my update. I'm going to revisit the 3-year strategic plan that we presented, I believe, to you all back in August of 2021, where we're at on that, how we're moving forward, and a great initiative that we kicked off on Tuesday of last week here at Fremont Ross with our faith-based community. So in the strategic plan, we talked about the pillar of access. We were going to review that with Fremont City Schools. We were also going to take the district through the Bridges Out of Poverty program. We did just that, and we did even more. So we looked at the pillar of attitude. We did a lot of training on biases. We went through the Bridges Out of Poverty in 2 PD dates. And then we were able to jump ahead of ourselves into 2022, and we started having training on microaggressions. So I feel pretty good on where we ended. It was very important when you're implementing diversity and inclusion and changing a culture that we needed to first start and go in and have conversation. I know there were some people that wanted us to move a little faster, but we had to have a conversation with our district, with our teachers, with our administrative support of where we're going and how things will be eventually shifting. Going into year 2, we're going to be looking at the pillar of access, and that determines what level of access are we giving for our programs and services. Through that will be a template for principals and teachers to visit. Like if I have a program, if I'm in Fremont Ross and I'm a counselor, how am I providing access to college information to all populations? And then looking at that conversation, because sometimes we might, even though we have equality, we want to make sure that all students are welcome. There is that equity piece at times where we might have to be going out and recruiting students to make sure that they have the information. Because we are finding out that some students are just not getting the information. And I don't believe it's by default of the school system, but some students don't realize that they can go back to a counselor and get information about college. So we'll be doing that access. How do you create access to your programs and services, access to athletics? So that's the pillar we'll be moving in. We'll still be having the conversation on microaggressions. Moving forward, we'll still be having those conversations on attitude, just checking in on our biases. But most importantly, we're getting ready to shift and start looking at our inclusive hiring practices and looking at inclusive hiring teams, training people for that, and where we are recruiting, getting the information out that teachers are, especially of color, are welcome to come to Fremont City Schools and to apply. So that's where we're at. Very, very excited about an event that we had with our faith-based community, something that I don't think has happened in about 10 to 15 years in Fremont. Maybe even the pastors co-signed me there. But for once, we had about 40 to 45 pastors in the room show up. We had a conversation with them about helping us with the youth. Fremont City Schools was there. And what we did is we highlighted our ACE mentoring program to get pastors involved or their churches involved in going through the background check. And we also highlighted what the mayor just launched was our Park Ambassador program. I've had a couple pastors reach out and email me, even talking about more ways that they can be involved. So I call that a positive win for the community. Any questions for me?
Just a couple comments, if I may, Shari. Thank you. The first one, I thought you were so right. Is some of our feedback after we do some of our programming, Shari, we'll do a survey and we'll get a good range. I think sometimes we'll get from some people, man, I need more of this. This is great stuff. And then we'll also get, boy, I wish we could go a little faster. I'm ready for some meat. I mean,
Yes.
So I think we're hitting a pretty good sweet spot, I think, really, because we get people on both ends of that. Then the other thing is we've already had, I think, half a dozen reach outs to our ACE mentoring program to get people going. And that's great. That was just from one kind of quick introduction. So we already have about half a dozen who have said, hey, sign me up. And those are just from the pastors, not necessarily the congregation yet. So far, really good response to that program.
And I would have to say in our last training, we were able to get the diversity and inclusion team involved, and they actually went into their own buildings this last time and performed the training. So we are starting to get more people involved. And I believe from the results we received, we had over, out of everyone that took the survey, about 80% that checked 4 and 5 were very positive. And so we're getting that, we're picking up that momentum, that's what we needed, very positive as we keep pushing the success needle forward.
Anything else for Shari? Okay. No. All right. Shari, thank you. I know you're a busy lady. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. You probably got 2 more meetings tonight if I know you.
Good
night, Shari. Thank you. All right. The other thing I'd like to do sort of as our work session is just an update with our strategic plan. Just for the community's sake, about, January, I think, we got together as a board and laid out some very broad focus points for the board thought were important for us to move forward in our next cycle of strategic planning. And we've been taking that back through the other committees. So Denise, if you don't mind, can you maybe tell us kind of what you've been doing with follow up on our strategic plan for the board?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Detweiler. Board members, in front of you, I have given you 2 handouts. The first one, I believe, is our process timeline, should be on top. And that's a piece that you've seen previously, but I just wanted to bring us back to that timeline so that we can see where we are and see the work we've already done, which is also exciting. I'm a big checklist person. I like to check them off as we go, and I feel like we're moving ahead. So if you look at the bottom of the front page, we are already into April, and where we are right now is having those conversations within our board subcommittees, being able to have opportunities like this evening where we can share that information in a more public setting. We know that we have individuals, although not here with us, but are going to watch and listen and may be able to provide comments back as well. If you flip over to the back, there's our work session for this evening. We will come back together as a DLT on May 5th, where we will then be able to take the work and take the comments, the revision possibilities back to the DLT. I will bring information back to you yet again on May 23rd with a more final draft with any of those changes. And then we will be ready, hopefully, for a full board approval with your blessing on June 13th, which will then bring us to a very nice place of an end of this school year opportunity and moving us forward with the new 3-year strategic plan to start next school year in August when we bring back our leadership first and then our staff and our teachers and really be able to take the work that you're going to see in draft this evening into its full capabilities.
So Denise, just so far, we've had district leadership team look at it fully and kind of create some action steps. Then we ran it past the policy committee and CQCC at this point, right, Denise?
Correct.
Those 3. Right?
Correct. Perfect segue, Mr. Detweiler. The second handout that you have is actually the document that we have shared. So each of you, you're absolutely fine. So what you have in front of you is what I have shared with your board subcommittees. Fremont City School Board of Education has 4 subcommittees. We have policy subcommittee, the CQCC, which is the Curriculum Quality Control Committee, Health and Wellness, and Finance. And so on those committees, we have a balance of all of our stakeholders. We have board members present at those committees. We have classified staff. We have certified staff. We have community members. We have higher education members. We have parents. We have teachers and staff and administrators from elementary level, middle school level, high school level. So truly within those subcommittees, your board subcommittees, we have a very nice cross section of all of our stakeholders. So it's a great opportunity to take a look at the work. So what we started with was your work. And so for the sake of a public opportunity, I would like to be able to share that in draft form. This is your work that you came up with previously in our work session. As a mission statement draft, we are committed to a culture of collaborative achievement, creating high-performing individuals, engaging successfully in a modern world. Our vision statement, of which you've come up with, is to develop individuals who will thrive as they find their place in their local and global community. And then going forward, in the absence of our 4 spokes in our previous strategic plan, what you have developed for us to move forward are 3 core components: students, staff, and community. It has been your belief that you've guided us with to say, in Fremont City Schools, we educate students, we support and develop staff, and we serve the community. And those are our core components that we have taken forward. Mr. Detweiler and I took your work, and took that back to our district leadership team. And the work of the DLT then wrote our strategic objectives and our action steps that will guide the work. So when we look at, we educate students, our challenge to our DLT was, what is the work? If we accomplish the goal, how will we get to educating students? We had data in front of us. We brainstormed a lot of different components, and the strategic objective that you have in front of you that our DLT has written is to educate students. We will develop a skill set for life that allows all students to flourish academically and as individuals.
Denise, we may not have that copy of that one. You guys have it? I've got the staff one, but I don't have the student one in front of me.
Yeah. I don't
Oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies. Then I
okay.
didn't get copied
That's all right.
correctly. My apologies.
So
I can email to you so that you can see that.
So the one we're looking at is just the staff one.
Okay, perfect. I will just read those through so you can hear that, and then I will email that out to you. Again, that strategic objective is to develop a skill set for life that allows all students to flourish academically and as individuals. And our DLT came up with 2 action steps to help us meet that. Students will engage in reading and writing in every subject area to improve our district data. And the second one was students will recognize their need to develop self-responsibility. We ask, so far of your 4 board subcommittees, 2 of them have met. Our policy committee and our CQCC have been able to review this. The other 2 subcommittees have meetings yet coming. And so they were able to give some feedback, which Mr. Detweiler and I will take back to the DLT. There was a lot of input that committee members very much liked, the idea of reading and writing across all content areas, that if we can improve the skill set of our students in reading and writing and make academic gains there, we will see benefit in all content areas. When we're talking about vocabulary, we looked a lot at the vocabulary data at DLT, the language usage within other content areas, and then the impact that that will bring to writing and being able to have writing exposure across content areas. So a lot of conversation there. And they brainstormed also some ideas and strategies that may be applicable when we encourage students to recognize their need to develop self-responsibility. We talked a lot about some restorative justice ideas and some zones of regulation where we're asking our students to be able to identify when they need to take a break and what that break looks like within the academic setting. Also, we talked a lot about students setting individual goals and being able to self-regulate to meet those goals. We want to try to embed some of those pieces. So that was some of the discussion there.
That one also, if I may, Denise, is a real response to kind of the lethargy we're feeling from some students. Some of them just haven't really gotten back in the groove after time out and so forth. And I'm hearing that from my peers in other districts as well. It's kind of a national problem, I think, is that engagement again. So that was that goal geared towards really finding that motivation for kids to get re-engaged. Now, not all kids, but we still have, unfortunately, more than we'd like that are, it's all going to be okay. Someone will bail me out before it all gets too ugly.
Mhm.
And there's that, we gave them a lot of grace during that time. And sometimes grace might be a little bit softening, if you know what I mean. So we're working on that. And that's that self-regulation. How can we get kids to own it again? That's our goal.
Absolutely. Our next item, we have to serve the community. And the strategic objective that the DLT wrote was to form reciprocal partnerships with community stakeholders to promote district pride. All of those chart papers, all of those pieces that we had in action in our work session when we were designing, I took all of that also to the DLT so that that leadership team could see all of the words that you produced that were important to you, even if they didn't make it into. So I think that when we talk a little bit about that district pride, that was one of those pieces that I think came off of that chart paper that you guys were working off of. That was a piece that was important. So we came up with 3 action steps here. The first is to promote positive student activities in the community. We want to be able to see our students out and about and what that looks like when they're involved and engaged in the community. Number 2, provide access to meaningful opportunities that improve district family partnerships. And number 3, we want to connect with diverse stakeholders to promote positive relationships. We believe that if we can meet those 3 action steps, that will be the work that will help us meet that strategic objective.
Board, if you remember, one of the conversations we had too was when it comes to the community, trying to get out of my basic routine. And I'm talking about for me personally, some things I haven't done. Maybe, like I mentioned, I've done pretty well with social clubs, the Kiwanis and Rotary, and that just goes very well. But there's a whole lot more to our community than that. So that last one, the diverse community, can you read that again, Denise? The diverse.
Yes. Connect with diverse stakeholders to promote positive relationships.
Yeah.
And one of, I think it was the CQCC committee, we had a lot of conversation about the word diverse stakeholders. And I think we kind of came back to say that meant, for the way our takeaway was, that was a variety of stakeholders. And then one of the challenges that CQCC would like me to take back to DLT would be that building principals, departments, directors, superintendent, that variety, that diverse stakeholder is just that. So I will use an example. Lutz Elementary has a great partnership, a great community partnership, a great connection with our local McDonald's franchise. They do a great thing back and forth. And Dr. Pierce was sitting at the table, and that was one of the challenges that we came up with as an example to say, we want to challenge Lutz that's not the one they use. They already have that. It's a variety. They need to stretch out and find a different stakeholder community so that we continue as a community to keep bridging those gaps and having those conversations. And I think we will be richer for it. So that really kind of goes right along there. And then the final aspect that I apologize again, you do have in front of you is that we support and develop staff. The strategic objective would be that we provide growth opportunities to improve professional practices and support all staff in order to positively impact student outcomes. So we're supporting our staff in order to ultimately make a positive gain for our student. And we came up with 3 action steps here as well. The first one, develop a preschool through grade 12 literacy focus, incorporating previous initiatives. So we don't want to necessarily throw everything out that we have that is positive, that is working, but we want to make sure that we are enriching and establishing those initiatives. And we specifically are looking at literacy again, because we believe that we have some strong data that is making some connections for us. The DLT has been looking at that early learning assessment, our ELA data out of preschool, since the end of last year. And we can see some of those word study, those vocabulary development, some of those connections. I could pull that all the way up to our ACT data with our juniors. So we can have a common piece and really dig in and do some work.
I have a question there.
Absolutely.
So are you referring in this case to a curriculum, which would be more towards educating students? Are you talking about a professional development program? Kind of train the trainers?
Not a curriculum as much as it would be a professional development idea with strategies attached.
Okay.
So there would be, there's work to it. We will be implementing a component, but not a set curriculum.
Okay.
Number 2, continue providing a level of individual selection for professional development. And number 3, develop a culture of connection and well-being through meaningful staff engagement. To go back to number 2, one of the things that my department has initiated and our staff has, I believe, greatly appreciated, when I'm planning those district-wide professional development days, there are times that because of legislative changes or because of, a testing change, or sometimes there's, or new curriculum, if there's a new textbook, there are things that dictate we have access to our staff on this day with no children. We've got to hit this topic. In order for them to best use their new textbook, we have to provide the rep time to tell them all the parts and pieces and so that they know what they're doing. So sometimes it gets really hard. But one of the things, and we actually kind of put it in place that last quarter in 1920 when we were out with COVID, was being able to provide some choices within. So I've come up with something I just called a PD menu. And so there are things on there that sometimes we say everybody has to do this for the first hour, but after that you can choose something else on the board that aligned to something you would like to learn more about, or something to your grade level or your content area. And we have gotten great feedback from our staff that they very much enjoy the professional aspect of being able to make choices and to choose items that they find that align to them, and not having everything dictated. And so we hear that from our staff. We appreciate that piece of information and data. And so that was a piece that we, at the district leadership team level, thought that we felt very hearty that should be a piece that included in here. So that's the idea of number 2. The idea of number 3, building that culture of connection and well-being. We know we need to take care of our staff as well. And we need them to feel connected and have a strong culture in each of our buildings. And if that's established and everyone feels good about coming to work because it's a quality place to be and they feel supported, our children will ultimately benefit from that. Now, one of the aspects that came out of our CQCC subcommittee that I will take back to the district leadership team is they are making the recommendation that these get reordered, because their thought was without number 3, we won't do well to have 1 and 2. And they felt like when we walked through those and we worked through those action steps that if our staff isn't connected and we don't have strong culture, that 1 and 2 will never come. So those are some pieces of information that Mr. Detweiler and I will take back to district leadership team on May 5th. And we'll continue to hash that out. We do have health and wellness that I think is meeting, I think it's May 15th, and finance is getting a meeting scheduled at the end of this month, beginning of May as well. So we'll just continue to flesh these pieces out with our stakeholders, get information back. Any questions about the draft items that you've seen or heard about? Mr. Price, anything, not to put you on the edge there, but you've been involved with both policy and CQCC. Anything different or anything that you heard at the committee?
No, I think it's great to hear, at every level, whether it's us or the DLT or down to the committees, and then finally, I mean, because this is the first year that I've been on either one of those two committees, so I'm meeting new people on those committees, but it's nice to see a wide range of, like you said earlier, it's not just all high school teachers or, so it's good to have all that kind of feedback. But I agree with what they were saying about on the staff part about number 3. You've got to have that community. Otherwise it all breaks down. I mean, it's no different than at your home. If mom and dad don't get along very well, then everything else just goes to pot. So
mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Right?
Yeah, you hit the big thing, get the big thing right. The little things are just little hiccups that you can take care of. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. I really appreciate all your
Thanks,
work
Denise.
on that.
Yeah,
You did a
great work.
job.
Thank you. It's coming.
Thank you, board. We'll stay on it and hopefully wrap this up in June and be ready to roll. So appreciate that very much. That's sort of it for my presentation tonight for the work session. Anything on diversity, inclusion, or strategic planning we didn't cover?
I don't think so.
All right.
So since Ms. Laird is here,
perfect.
let's go back to legislative report because she said she had something for us. So we don't, before we
Yes.
get into everything else.
Thank you. Try to look for topics that our families may be hearing in the news and try to bring it to home and how that affects people. We're hearing a lot about bird flu, inflation, workforce, all that kind of stuff. So what I have tonight is some information on those specific topics, how it relates to school districts, and then some of the legislative initiatives that are going on right now to help combat the issues. So I wanted to make sure people knew about what's happening and then initiatives to make it better. And at the end of the day, I think the full answers are going to lie in our students because they have the creativity. They're the ones growing up in challenging times, and that's where some of our greatest resourcefulness and strength comes from, is out of diversity. So I think in years to come, we'll see some little giant names on some new stuff that fixes a lot of this. So my first source that I'd like to cite this evening is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Economic Research Service of the USDA. Inflation, of course, meaning the increase in pricing of goods and services that we all use. So this is the school, whether that's our food that we use to feed the children, the fuel costs that we have of our busing. And then on the reverse side of that, of course, our families are impacted. The costs of everything that they're trying to provide for their children has been impacted. So it all works together. Couple of things that I thought would be interesting. The forecast for 2022 increase in specific prices. Overall food, they are projecting a 5.5 increase across the board. That's significant dollars. A food away from home, 6.5. You've probably already seen, if you've been out to eat, some increase in prices, or if you haven't seen the price increase, how about the decrease in your portion? That's another way that gets combated. So if you think about it, the cost of that portion went up because that's not the portion that you got before. Or maybe you don't have the same menu options that you had before. So we're seeing the impact that way. Poultry is up 7%. That's one of the highest. I've got some details on that in just a second. And fats and oils are up 7%. Those were some of the higher increases in there. Information on poultry, let me get to that specifically. We've heard about bird flu, also known as HPAI. Well, these acronyms for these things. But it has indeed killed 7 million layers so far. 7 million layers. That's 5% of the United States laying flock. That's a significant amount. So egg prices are spiking. going into that, and they're projecting that by the end of the year, that's going to be up 15%. So think about everything that we use basic eggs for. And chicken used to be your cheapest meal. Not the case now. Not the case now, folks. So that's from the USDA. The next thing that I have for you is from North American Trading and Logistics. A few bullet points here on the National Commodity Report. So, Mr. Price, you had mentioned this a couple meetings back. The war in Ukraine is interrupting grain, edible oil, fertilizer shipments, and world prices have jumped, and the cost of planting in 2022 crops have gone up worldwide. I don't think people realize, I certainly didn't myself, just how much grain came out of Ukraine. Significant. The hot, dry La Nina weather pattern continues to clip the world crop output, with South America losing soybean and corn production after a drought hit key production areas. And currently 70% of North America's wheat belt is in drought conditions. So if you think about that, livestock feeds costs bounced 15% higher, also following the Ukraine invasion. Moreover, tighter supplies look like they could keep food costs up all the way through 2023. The bird flu, I already mentioned that. And then inflation, this is our families, the impact on them. It's shrinking consumer budgets. They got less to work with because everything that they buy is costing more, making it harder to pass higher costs through. So, typically the providers would increase the price of the product to compensate for their costs increasing. Well, right now, families can't afford it. So what are we going to do? That's that particular report for you. One other thing on what's happening and contributing factors to that I wanted to share actually came from an event that my son attended. And it was in Columbus, Ohio this month, a National Restaurant Institute, and highly attended by the Ohio Restaurant Association. One of the things they talked about was what we're working through right now, referring to as the Great Retirement. Have you heard of that term yet? It's the Great Retirement. Through the pandemic, and I've seen this even where I work. So we have had more than 7% increase in the number of people that have retired than any other time in our history. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of early retirements happened. It was just hectic conditions. When we think about the fear at the beginning, do I want to spend these next couple of years working, or I'm going to spend it with my family if I'm close enough and I'm able to do that? And how about the working conditions and how that changed? Some people thought this is flipping completely upside down, and I think this is time for me to step out and maybe let younger people take on. So we lost that large percentage of our workforce, and they were baby boomers, which was the largest percentage of the population. So that's significant. That's 3.3 million people. There are right now 11 million jobs unfilled. 11 million jobs unfilled. The group talked about, or the presenters had talked about, everyone had hoped there would be a baby boom during the lockdown. We did not. We had a baby boost. That was it. But certainly an increase in population down the road is going to restock the workforce. And one of the other things that they talked about was immigration. So folks, no matter where you're at on the immigration topics happening nationally, pay attention and really think about this. In the restaurant industry, the message my son conveyed to me from that was very much pro-reform of immigration. Food service industries, whether that's through the ag community, all the way through hospitality and restaurants and so forth. Many migrant workers provided that for us. Things have changed. Not as many migrants are coming in to fill those. And from that industry's perspective, a relook at that might help to replenish the workforce in whatever way that may look like. So just keep an eye and keep an open mind as these conversations happen. So, moving on to what are some of the solutions to all of this? So, our state treasurer, this is from the Youngstown Morning Journal. Through the month of March and part of April, Treasurer Robert Sprague and State Senator Michael Rollini, they held roundtable discussions. They followed 8 districts and invited people to meet to talk about what's happening, whether that's a shortage in the workforce, inflation, and so on, and what might they be able to do. So I will keep you posted on what the state treasurer comes up with as he gathers this information and hopefully put some things together to help that. Some of their takeaways was that inflation hit another 40-year high in February, and it rose by 7.9%. A lot of that we already talked about. Cost of meats, poultry, and fish is up 13% year over year. Milk and eggs, 11. Fruits and vegetables are up 8. So a lot for them to consider. And the last source that I have is I reached out to our local state representative and I asked for information on what discussions actually have some traction. There's all kinds of ideas going on at the state legislature, but these aren't necessarily passed, but they have some traction. Couple of the interesting ones that I thought was Senate Bill 277 says the bill temporarily reduces the per gallon tax on motor fuel purchased in Ohio and eliminates supplementary fees paid by registrants of hybrid and electronic motor vehicles. I think that's very relevant. That would certainly impact our school district. The cost of fuel of those buses is a lot, folks. It's a lot. There's another one. It includes tax cuts while appropriating funds. This is HB 110, and it suspends inflationary indexes for 2021, which should resume in 2022. They're going to hopefully take some of that out. House Bill 197 authorizes a temporary non-refundable income tax credit up to $25,000 per year for training expenses paid by employers to operate commercial vehicles. So the shortage of drivers, we might have some money to help towards the cost because as I understand it, a lot of those individuals have to pay for that on their own. And the cost of that has gone up. So this would help employers enable people to come and work to that. And the particular staff member of Mr. Reineke, I'm sorry.
Mr. Click?
Mr. Click, thank you. Mr. Reineke had that position previously. Put in here a personal note. I used to work in the trucking industry. They're hurting for truck drivers, and it's not helping the domestic supply chains. If the bills were to effectively pass, more drivers would be trained and employed. Significant portions of the supply chain could be alleviated. So in some segments, it's that we don't have stocked shelves to get products out to people. In other cases, we have stocked shelves. We don't have people to drive them, to get them someplace. Or we don't have people on the receiving end to then provide customer service and getting those to consumers. So I've got the list here. I'll give all of this to you, Megan, for notes. So I know that was a lot of information. I hope it was helpful and you heard some things you may not have heard before. Thank you.
All right. So let's see. We can go ahead and go into the recommendations of the superintendent.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Price. Moving on here to item 1. I'd like to take a moment to explain what we're doing here with item 1. That's our Purple and White summer program. We have a bus that takes meals to congregate settings. Okay. So we have had, the federal government has kind of changed their mind a couple of times recently. Like at one point we thought, Tracy came to see me and said, we've got every meal for every kid all summer. Yay. Then we got, clarified, only for those areas impacted by COVID. Of course, we don't have any guidance yet to know what that even means.
Who's not?
Well, that's it. But our numbers are down. I mean, so we really are waiting. So we don't know. So I guess my point is for this tonight, I'm asking you to sort of take a leap of faith with me that this may happen. Because what I'd like to do then, if we do get the green light, I've got board approval and we can run. If it doesn't happen, this will just die a slow, painful federal government death because we won't be able to do it. But right now, it's still a moving target, but we're going to run out of time and need to get prepped for a summer program that's only about 6 weeks away. So with your permission, I'd like to approve this. This will allow us, with the board's approval, to proceed with the summer meal program if we would get all clarification and paperwork from the government that we need. So if that makes any sense or not, but that's what that one's all about. So with that, if I could have maybe your approval.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve item 1, please? Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Laird. Any discussion on that?
I would certainly hope the measurement of impact isn't just on the number of current cases.
What? Yeah,
Because impact is what's left over.
you're right.
So this
We're
happened
feeling
and now.
Here where we are.
This is
These are
the
the results.
after effect, not just
Absolutely.
what's happening right now.
Yeah. And guidance seems to come later. And it's, it's almost like, well, someone realizes, oh, that can't do that. Let's do something else. And it's a moving target to say the least. It's a little bit like you did the same thing for me last month. Remember you approved a summer, we changed the times because we found out if we go another half hour, we get the meal program. So some of those things that as we get this clarification, it gives us freedom to move ahead.
So you're saying the government gives school districts a moving target?
I know.
That's
crazy.
first, isn't
crazy
it?
talk. I know. I get it.
It's ridiculous to me. I mean, who's affected by COVID? Well, everybody was.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, every school was shut down and everything. And the thing is it's feeding kids.
Yep.
Come on.
Yep.
I mean, this is a no-brainer.
We're hoping to get that clarification sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So I'll keep you updated on that too.
All right. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray, Mr. Price.
Yes. Motion's approved.
And I might add too, there's a big distinction between what they call congregate settings versus non-congregate settings. So we've brought them to school, that would be a congregate settings. They're in a congregation. So, but delivering it to remote sites is non-congregate, and there's rules for each and reimbursement rates for each, and it's pretty complicated.
So if I may, John,
Sure.
would a migrant camp be considered a congregate setting?
I don't know that. That's a very good question. It would
that
seem
there's
like
still some
a captive audience, right?
collective
Yeah.
groups that would
Right.
fit that.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Oh, well, more to come. Thank you. Item 2, moving on into the personnel. Kathy Linder, after 34 years, has been, she was here when I came, and we joke about the good old days at Otis. So it's congratulations to Kathy after many, many years of service to the district. You approve her resignation this evening. Appointment for staff substitute, William Sykes. And then item 4 moves into our supplemental contracts, spring music programs. These are mostly out of our elementary schools. Those are, I saw Mrs. Wright. She was at Lutz today, and you can tell she's in full-blown 4th grade play mode because but it's going to be great. They do a great job. And these will be held at the PAC, by the way, at the Performing Arts Center with the 4th graders. So 2 programs a night from each elementary to cover four elementaries in 2 nights, 2 each, like a 5:30 and a 7. So we're going to see how it goes. We're excited about that. Item 5, special event workers. You see some familiar names on there. Item 6, thank you. You've approved that we have a summer program. Now we have 2 leaders of both. So for K3, Mr. Ward will step up, and for the 4-5, Mr. Matz. Item 7, status changes for Lisa Sachs, Cynthia Hefflinger, and Patricia Smith. Those are our personnel items for this evening.
Can I get a motion to approve items 2 through 7, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Spiritu. Second by Mrs. Ray. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. All right, moving on to report of the treasurer.
Good evening. April's been a really busy month in our department. We've wrapped up some with one set of auditors, and now we have the state auditors in wrapping up that audit as well. They're actually in-house this whole week, so it's a little crazy back in my department trying to get everything around for them. But day one's gone great, and they seem to be getting everything they need to get done. So it'll be a nice thing for my office once that's all wrapped up. Get our spaces back to where we can find everything. And then tonight I do have a supplemental appropriation on for the youth asset team.
Can I get a motion to approve item 8, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. Moving on to board member communications. Mrs. Bloom.
Well, it was nice to hear from Shari and how things are going, and that they're gonna be able to get more information to students about college, and be nice if they get some, like, with the, what do you want to call them, trades and stuff too. Get more information about how they can do that. Maybe a little less money being spent towards their education. And then with Miss Hurt, it was nice to hear about that they're going to look into doing more with the reading and the writing, because that's really important. I mean, especially reading. It's I don't know, number one topic. I think that's about it.
Mrs. Spiritu.
I also want to thank Shari for coming in and giving us an update and hearing the progress that's coming along. And there's resources out there, and I'm glad it's being more focused on for the students to just know where to go. And like, if you don't know, then you don't know. But if it's, out there, hopefully they'll take advantage of it. So that's great to hear, trying to come at it, at a different angle, because sometimes it just, you feel like it's out there, but some students don't know where to start or where to ask. So that'll be very helpful. Also like to thank Denise for coming in and sharing the progress and the feedback of the strategic planning. It feels so long ago that we got together, and it's coming along. So, and then I also like to thank Chantel for her legislative report. It's always very informative and helpful to understand what's going on.
Laird.
I certainly echo all of that from these two ladies, and I'd like to thank Representative Gary Click and his staff. It really is nice when you have elected officials that'll take a phone call, respond to an email, and they do so quickly and provide just the facts to you. That this is what's happening. Here's the source where you can go to read about it, and I really appreciate that. So I can present that to all of you. Would like to thank Mr. Ward and Mr. Matz for leading those summer programs. They're great with kids. The kids are lucky to have them. Our district's lucky. Thank you.
Right.
Well, I mirror what my colleagues said tonight. And congratulations to Mrs. Linder. We're going to certainly miss her in the district. It's been around for our students for 34 years, was it?
Yep.
30. Yeah. So thank you and congratulations in your future. Thanks to Shari for the report, and it's nice to see the progress that we're making. When you see one thing on paper, but then when you actually see that we're at step, same with Denise, we gotten together and we've seen all the scrambled stuff, and then when you see it kind of all coming together, it's really exciting to see our district moving forward. And I guess that's pretty much. Thanks to our visitor for coming tonight. Hope it's been beneficial and that you've learned a lot about what we're doing here at Fremont City Schools.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry,
Thank
you
you.
brought up a thought. So I appreciate you very much. Unfortunately, I passed Shari in the parking lot my way in, so I wasn't able to hear her report this time, but every time she's come, it's been great information. And I just want to impress upon you watching, who go back and look at some of the videos, at times, we've had audience members bring up concerns of things happening with diversity and inclusion throughout the nation and things that are somewhat controversial. And I ask you to go back and look at every time Shari has presented to this board, because that is the look of what's happening here in Fremont City Schools. That's what our parents and our households need to be most focused on, what's happening with your children in your school districts. And she brings it right to you, right to the public. So I encourage you to go back and look at those particular videos.
Kind of back. It's exciting to hear the one presentation that you brought from the legislators, that we will be getting probably some help and some towards our fuel cost, because I can't even imagine.
It's
I
double.
can't even imagine.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Like Megan knows, but I can't even imagine.
We're thinking about incorporating phys ed component, have the kids push the buses. just experimental. It's just experimental.
That is, folks, that is Senate Bill 277 and House Bills 197. You can all advocate. Call your representatives and tell them to vote for those.
It helps everybody.
That's right.
Not just school districts with
Right.
buses or
Yes.
trucks. It helps me going to the gas station and filling up my vehicle. So it'll help everybody.
Can you forward that information to us that we can just, call and.
I wonder if
Or-
maybe going forward it would be helpful if I'm going to reference something like that. If I get it to you ahead of time, could we put it on an overhead
Of course.
so that
Right.
people can see that? And okay,
Because I certainly
Will
want to
do.
do it.
Sounds good.
thank you. Bye.
Well, thanks Denise and Shari for the work you guys are doing with all the different staff members, with community or with the different committees and everything like that. I think one good thing out of this is you can get in that rut, and it doesn't matter what business you're in. We're still a school. We still are here to educate kids no matter what position we hold. But to revisit some of this stuff every few years and get a little bit different take or a little bit more development or a little bit understanding of how things, especially after the last couple of years we've had, to change things up a little bit, even though it's still the same thing, it's still the same message, but you got to present it in a different way sometimes. So I think that's always a good thing, because if staff is on board and everybody is doing what they need to do, then the kids are going to fall right into place because they're following their leaders when they come into school every day. So it's a good thing. So one quick shout out, not to miss any of the other spring sports, but congratulations to the varsity baseball team.
Baseball.
10,
Alright.
is it 10-1?
At least 9, I think. And they
So
got
I know
another
they
one
just
tomorrow.
won Saturday against Oak Harbor.
Yep.
They've beat a couple powerhouses this year in Central Catholic and St. John's. So
Yeah.
congratulations to the varsity baseball team this spring, doing really well so far. So not that other sports aren't. So
Boys and girls track both showing well as
Yeah.
also
yeah, so.
doing quite well.
With that, I would like to make a motion to go into a quick executive session under item B as in boy. If I could. Could I get a second, please?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any discussion? And just for understanding, there will not be any action taken after the executive session. So there won't be anything else on the list or on the agenda. So roll call, please.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Wright.
Yes.
Okay, motion's approved. We will be heading into executive session.